My niece mocked me in front of everyone, saying I was only there because I paid for everything. So I left. But what happened after taught them a lesson they would never forget. I'm Alex, 32, and for the past 6 years I've been the silent financier of my extended family's illusions of stability. It started small, covering a phone bill here, helping out with a school trip there. But somewhere along the way, it turned into monthly rent payments, car insurance, tuition for a niece I barely saw outside of birthdays, and emergency credit card debt that never seemed to stop being an emergency. I'm not rich. I just learned how to manage money better than the rest of my family. When I got a decent-paying tech job out of state, I figured helping out here and there was just what family did. But there's a difference between helping and being used. Last weekend, I flew back home for my mom's birthday, or at least that's what I thought the occasion was. I'd already paid for the flight, booked myself a modest Airbnb because my childhood room had been converted into a craft storage area, and even bought my 14-year-old niece Emma a designer purse she had been begging for through passive-aggressive Instagram stories. I saw the screenshots she made sure I did. She even tagged me in a manifesting this nail polish story a week before her birthday. I knew it was manipulative, but I told myself, maybe she's just a kid trying to fit in. I wish that were true. The moment I walked into the backyard, balloons, loud music, a giant cake with pink cursive frosting, I knew I'd been tricked. This wasn't a birthday party for my mom. It was a full-blown congratulations, Emma party for getting into some private arts high school that cost more per semester than my college degree. She'd gotten in, partly because I wrote the recommendation letter and helped pay for the prep classes. But my name wasn't mentioned once in the slideshow montage playing on a rented screen above the pool. Instead, I walked into the middle of some kind of weird family pageant. My brother, James, Emma's dad, was holding court with a drink in hand, telling stories about all the sacrifices they made to get Emma into the school. His wife, Trina, was crying fake tears, as if she personally coached Emma through every application. Nobody had even told me this party was happening. By the time I realized what was going on, I'd already been handed a drink and told to smile for the family photo. I plastered on the same forced grin I'd worn since high school reunions and weddings I wasn't invited to, but paid for anyway. James gave me a pat on the back, hard enough to feel like a warning. "Look who finally showed up," he said with a smirk. "You got here just in time for the toast." Emma, dressed like an influencer on her way to Coachella, strutted over, with the purse dangling from her wrist like it was radioactive. She looked me up and down and said, in front of half the family and a few random neighbors, "You're only invited because you pay for everything." A few people laughed. Some awkwardly glanced away. James chuckled and added, "Well, he knows his role, right, Alex?" That was the moment something in me went completely, utterly still. I just sipped my drink, didn't smile, didn't frown, just watched the condensation crawl down the glass and waited until my hand stopped shaking. The rest of the night was a blur of clinking glasses, fake hugs, and shallow compliments. No one asked how I was doing, how work was going, or even where I was staying. I was a background character in a show I accidentally funded. When the music got louder and the dancing began, I quietly walked inside, past the dining room full of gifts, and grabbed my laptop from my bag. I sat in the corner of the living room, unnoticed, typing quickly, not angry, just focused. I logged into my banking app and started flipping switches. The joint account I'd set up to help James with temporary car payments closed. The pre-authorized tuition payments for Emma's school canceled. Every automatic transfer, from Netflix to their cell phone provider, one by one, I shut them down. I sent polite emails to their utilities company, to the property manager I'd been wiring rent to, and even to the subscription box service Emma used for her overpriced makeup kits. Canceled, canceled, canceled. Then I pulled a plain envelope from my bag, slipped in a folded piece of paper I printed weeks ago. A complete list of every payment I'd made on their behalf for the last 5 years. Itemized. I added a note at the bottom in my cleanest handwriting. "This ends today. Alex." By the time I slipped the envelope onto the kitchen table and walked out the door, the party was still going strong. Nobody noticed I left. The next morning I turned off my phone after watching it buzz 47 times in under 10 minutes. James, Mom, Trina, even Emma. I didn't open a single message. By the time they found the envelope, I was already boarding my flight back home. That's when the voicemail started getting ugly. The first voicemail came from James. His voice was sharp but controlled, the kind of tone he used when he thought he was being diplomatic. "Hey Alex, got your little note. Kind of dramatic, don't you think? I mean, if you had concerns, you could have just talked to me, man. Don't make a scene. Call me back, all right?" 5 minutes later, another came through, this time from Trina. Her voice cracked halfway through like she just finished crying or was gearing up to. "Alex, I don't understand why you'd do something like this." Emma's heartbroken. "Do you know what this kind of disruption does to her emotional stability? We trusted you. You said you were family." By noon, the tone had shifted. James again, this time yelling, "You think you can just walk away? After everything we've built? After everything we've planned?" "Emma must start school in 2 weeks, Alex." 2 weeks. And you chose now to have a meltdown? Message after message, they stopped being about me and started sounding like desperate pitches to an investor they assumed was bluffing. I wasn't. I turned my phone off, set up a new number for work, and told HR I needed a few days of mental health leave. No questions asked. I hadn't taken a vacation in 4 years anyway. Not that anyone in my family ever noticed. It's strange, the peace that settles in when you finally stop watering a dead plant. For the first time in years, I wasn't checking my balance every few hours to make sure there was enough to cover someone else's mess. I wasn't postponing dentist appointments or skipping vacations to make sure Emma had a new phone every September, or that James could keep pretending his freelance photography passion was more than just an excuse to avoid real work. But the silence didn't last long. 2 days after I got back, my mom called. I didn't answer, of course, but the voicemail she left, "Alex, sweetheart, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Your brother's under a lot of stress. Emma's going through a critical developmental stage, and you know how sensitive she is. We just need to sit down, all of us, and talk like a family. Don't punish everyone over one comment. You're better than that. You're better than that." That line stuck with me more than I expected. Not because I believed it, but because I realized she didn't mean better than that morally. She meant better than retaliating, better than fighting back, better than asking for respect. And the real kicker, not once, not a single time, did she ask how I was doing. A week passed, then 2. My email pinged with overdue notices addressed to James. My bank confirmed that the lease co-signed in my name had now been flagged for default. Emma's school tried contacting me with polite reminders that the fall tuition was late. I ignored them all. They'd find someone else, or they wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. But then came the message that turned everything from noise to fury. An email from Emma. Subject line, "Wow, rude." No greeting, no punctuation, no full sentences either. Just, "You said you would always be there. Guess that was a lie like everything else. Don't worry, we'll figure it out since you clearly think you're better than everyone." Blocked. I stared at the screen, stunned for a moment. Not because I was hurt, but because it was so profoundly ungrateful. No anger, no heartbreak, just petty entitlement laced with teenage venom. Written from a phone I bought, in a house I paid for, after a party I unintentionally funded. I wanted to laugh. I almost did. Instead, I logged into one final account, an old shared cloud drive I'd set up for the family to back up photos and documents. I changed the password. Then I changed the email recovery. And then I left one file in the folder, a scanned PDF titled, "You're welcome." Inside was every receipt I'd ever kept, over $112,000 in support over the last 6 years. Rent, utilities, school fees, plane tickets, cell phones, grocery cards, Christmas gifts, emergency bailouts. At the bottom of the document was a simple message in bold, plain text: "A one-man bank only stays open when it's respected." They didn't respond, but I know they saw it. A few days later, I got a knock on my apartment door. I hadn't told anyone where I lived, but James found out through our cousin who'd visited once. I didn't open the door, just watched through the peephole as he stood there, clutching a wrinkled envelope. He didn't knock again. He just placed the envelope on my doormat and walked away. I picked it up once I was sure he was gone. Inside was a handwritten note, jagged, rushed, and angry. "Don't forget who made you. Don't forget who was there before your money. You don't just get to walk out on your family. You'll come crawling back. You always do. No signature, just that." That night, I packed a small duffel bag, changed the lock on my door, and scheduled an appointment with a lawyer to remove my name from anything still connected to them. But it wasn't until I got one more call, not from James, not from my mom, but from Emma's school, that I knew the storm was really starting. They weren't asking for payment anymore. They were telling me Emma had been withdrawn. Tuition hadn't just lapsed, it had bounced. A few hours later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize.
"Alex?"
the voice asked, shaky, unsure. "This is Principal Hayward. Emma listed you as her guardian for emergencies. Her parents haven't answered our calls. I think you need to know what happened." I stood completely still in my kitchen, my coffee untouched on the counter, heart pounding, not with fear, but with a feeling I couldn't quite place. "I'm listening," I said. There was a pause on the line, the kind that stretches just long enough to make your pulse tick a little faster. Principal Hayward cleared her throat softly, trying to steady whatever tension she felt on her end. "I'll be honest, Mr. Carter," she said, using a title no one in my family ever bothered with. "We normally wouldn't reach out like this, but Emma had an incident. Nothing dangerous exactly, but concerning. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I knew the drill. Give them room to explain. People will always fill silence if you let them." "She had a bit of a meltdown at school," she continued. "She was crying, pacing around the counselor's office, saying things like, 'He left us, and he doesn't care anymore.' She claimed you were cutting her off financially to punish her. Then she started tearing apart her sketchbooks, said none of it mattered if she wasn't going to the school anymore. A hollow feeling settled in my chest, not guilt, just a numb ache. I'd always suspected Emma was more than just spoiled, that maybe somewhere beneath the surface. She was a scared kid clinging to the only consistent thing she'd ever known. Me. She's not in any danger," the principal added quickly, "but we wanted to flag it because, well, the reaction was intense. Our counselor said it felt like abandonment trauma. She asked for you specifically." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding, not because I felt responsible, but because of how heavy that request was. I didn't want to be the emergency contact anymore. I didn't want to be the Band-Aid for a family that stabbed first and cried later. But Emma, she was 14, and somewhere along the line, they'd made me her foundation without ever asking me. "She's with her mom now," the principal finished. "But if you can call her, even just once, I think it would help." I didn't answer. I just thanked her politely, hung up, and stared at my phone like it had grown thorns. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. 1 bedroom, clean kitchen, peace like I hadn't known in years, and pulled out my old journals, notebooks I hadn't opened since 2019. The pages were filled with timelines, goals, loan payment plans, diagrams of financial independence, notes on compound interest, side hustles, investment accounts. At the bottom of one page, I had scribbled a line I remembered writing. After James had asked me to float him $10,000 for a business idea involving a subscription box for leather-scented candles. Don't bleed out trying to be someone else's tourniquet. I had tried to save a family that was never drowning, just lazy, comfortable. They hadn't just leaned on me, they made it policy, expectation. They turned kindness into currency and then got angry when the ATM stopped spitting out bills. But Emma wasn't James. And that, right there, was the emotional knot I couldn't untie. The next morning, I called her. She didn't answer at first, and I was almost relieved, but 5 minutes later she called back. Her voice was small, quiet, not angry, not sarcastic. "Uncle Alex." I leaned back in my chair, stared at the ceiling. "Hey kid," another pause. Then, "Why'd you stop talking to us?" I thought about sugarcoating it, blaming work, saying I needed space, offering the easy lie to smooth things over. But I didn't. "Because no one treated me like family," I said. "They treated me like a bank account." Her breath caught. "I heard it, but not you," I added after a beat. "Not always. You were just raised in it." She didn't say anything. The silence on the line was different this time, not empty but heavy, processing. "I didn't mean what I said about you only being invited because you pay for stuff," she whispered. I was trying to sound cool. Dad laughed. "I thought you'd laugh too." "Emma," I said calmly but firmly, "you don't have to be cruel to feel important." More silence. "I think I'm just scared," she admitted, voice cracking. "Everything's falling apart. Dad's yelling all the time. Mom cries in the car. I heard them say we're going to lose the house. They blamed you, said you abandoned us." "Of course they did. They said you left us because you don't love us anymore." There it was. The lie that always came when people like James lost control, turn a boundary into betrayal, paint themselves the victim in a story where they were holding the knife. I sighed. "No, Emma. I didn't leave because I stopped loving anyone. I left because I started loving myself." That broke something in her. I could hear it, a sharp breath, the beginning of a sob she was trying to smother. She sniffled and whispered, "I miss you." I closed my eyes. There were 1,000 things I could say, 1,000 ways to respond. But all I said was, "I know." When the call ended, I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant. I just sat with it. The next few days were quiet again until James called. Not to yell this time, to beg. He asked for a meeting, said we needed to talk, said it was about the envelope. I didn't agree right away. But something about the tone in his voice, not anger, not pride, just desperation, made me curious. So I told him to meet me, neutral ground, no house, no family, just us. I walked into that cafe 2 days later. and what I saw made me pause. James didn't look like himself. He looked older, thinner, exhausted, like someone who'd finally seen what life looks like when the safety net cuts itself loose. He didn't say hello. He just slid a folder across the table. I opened it, and I went cold. Inside was a legal notice. Debt collectors, over $90,000 in unpaid balances. My name was still attached to one account, and right there, printed in clean, bold letters, CO signer liable. I stared at the words like they were written in a language I barely recognized. CO signer liable. And it hit me all at once. A tsunami of betrayal and bitterness. After everything, after I had cut them off, unspooled myself from their leeching grasp, there was still a vine around my ankle, buried and unseen, dragging me back into their mess. You didn't remove me, I said flatly, not even looking up. You said you would. James shifted in his seat. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hands trembled around a half-empty coffee cup. His voice was dry, desperate. I meant to. I really did. We just thought you'd come around, that you'd change your mind. That sentence hung in the air like smoke from a fire he didn't know he started. You thought I'd come around? I repeated slowly. So you left me legally tied to your debt in case I changed my mind? He nodded, pathetically. I didn't know it would get this bad. No, I said quietly. You didn't care if it did. I leaned back in my seat, folding my arms, letting silence press down like gravity. I wanted him to feel it. Not just my anger, but my clarity, the difference between a victim and a volunteer. He broke first. He always did. Look, I know I messed up, he muttered. We messed up. But Emma, she's struggling. Trina is threatening to leave. I can't work with all this stress. The collectors won't stop calling. And now that the school's withdrawn her, she was never my responsibility, I snapped. You made her mine because it was easier than growing up. James flinched like I'd slapped him, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. You coasted on my paychecks and called it family. You let your daughter insult me in public and laughed. You watched our mother say nothing because she was too busy enjoying the ride. I was never a brother to you. I was your meal ticket. I didn't know you hated us this much, he mumbled. I don't, I replied coldly. If I did, I'd have never helped to begin with. But I've learned that love without boundaries is just self-destruction. He was quiet, too quiet, and then he said something so absurd it nearly made me laugh. You could fix this. I blinked. You could call the collectors, pay the minimums, buy us time. My jaw tightened. James, I said, I just told you. No, just hear me out, he interrupted, his voice cracking. You can afford it. You're good with money. You said it yourself. You love Emma. Don't punish her for our mistakes. He thought he was being noble. He thought this was a final Hail Mary, an appeal to my good heart, the one they drained dry and mistook for an infinite well. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't storm out. I just opened my backpack, pulled out a small folder of my own, and slid it across the table. What's this? He asked. My lawyer's contact, I said. Inside is a notice of my intent to legally remove my name from every account associated with you. It also includes a repayment summary of what you owe me from the last 6 years. With interest, James looked at me like I had just handed him a death sentence. In a way, I had. You can't be serious, he whispered. I am, I said. You want to guilt me into saving you, but I didn't create this chaos. I just funded it. I don't have that kind of money. I know, I said simply, standing up. That's why you'll have to figure it out like every other adult. He didn't follow me out. He didn't even speak again. Just sat there, staring at that folder like it was a coffin nailed shut. It took 3 months of legal paperwork, back and forths with the bank, and a signed affidavit from my lawyer, but I was finally removed from the co-signed loan. It cost me more money than I wanted to spend, but it was worth every penny for the peace it bought. I also filed a formal claim to recover some of what I was owed. While I knew I'd never see most of it, the principal mattered more than the payout. In that same window of time, Emma emailed me, not through her old account, which had apparently been shut down, but through a school-provided address at her new, less prestigious but still decent public arts program. Subject line, I'm sorry. The message was short, honest. She didn't beg. She didn't excuse what she said. She just wrote, I didn't realize what you were doing for us until you stopped. I hope I can be someone you're proud of someday. Thank you for giving me more than I ever deserved. That was the first time I cried in a long time, not because I felt guilty, but because it reminded me that some part of what I tried to do did land, maybe not with the adults, but with the next generation, with the one who still had time to be better than her parents. I replied simply, you already are. Keep going. As for the rest of the family, my mother left 2 voicemails in early December. She wanted to make things right for Christmas, invited me to come home to reconnect. I didn't answer either call. Instead, I mailed a simple card. No photos, no warm message, just one sentence. Sometimes the best gift you can give a family is distance. I never heard from her again. James, I got a notice from the county courthouse a few months later. Bankruptcy filing. They lost the house. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just filed it away in a folder marked closure. And me? I moved, got a better job, found a smaller circle of people who didn't need to be bought to treat me with kindness. I started traveling, not just for work, but for myself. Paris, Kyoto, Vancouver. I even started a blog documenting financial independence and how to cut ties with toxic family dynamics without losing your soul. Sometimes I wonder if James ever saw it. I hope he did, because in the end, my revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't about burning their house down or ruining their lives. It was about this. I stopped letting people spend my peace like it was spare change. And that finally was enough.